Hello everyone, and this is Desby, aka DezbyDoodyls, aka Pyramid Head Desby. And I'm here doing a tutorial for a friend of mine that requested it. It's going to be a basic tutorial to help not only her but other people to get started or to learn things they didn't even know they had an advantage of. And it can be very confusing. I remember when I started out, everything was so confusing. And you have many questions, but you don't know what questions to ask because you don't know what exactly you're looking at. So, like I said, it's going to be basic, and you can apply this basic knowledge into your to any other programs. That's what I'm aiming for. Programs like Clip Studio Paint or Photoshop and Metabang. I think Metabang. So let us get started and hope this goes well. Alright, so first we're going to create a new file, and it'll see this thing called New Canvas. I personally go to inches because pixels confuse me, and it'll help me better to, if I want to make prints in that size and just that size, and it'll be easier for me, like an 8x10, inches 8x10. So I'm gonna do a 10x10 inch. Actually, we'll go smaller, 5x5. Resolution, I usually keep at 300 to 500. If you want to make prints, you go above 300. Usually go 400, or if you want to, 500. Just as long as your computer can handle it. For Psy has limitations with its memory usage. So please just keep that in mind, because sometimes it won't be able to handle your big files. Alright, so now we have a new layer, or a layer. If you're working in Psy, your first layer right here is already transparent. For Photoshop and other places, it'll be automatically white. But with Psy, it'll be automatically transparent. So if I want to save that, and I save it as a PNG file, it'll keep the black line and all the white is going to be transparent. So keep that in mind too. Especially if you like to draw and then color with the white still there, and then you keep the transparency, you don't fill in this white, it'll make the picture look very strange. Alright. So if you don't want, and if you're doing Photoshop or Clip Paint Studio and you're not automatically having a transparent, you'll know it's transparent because they usually have like checkered boxes, and there's gray ones. That's how you know you'll have transparency, if you save it as a PNG file, not a JPEG. Alright, so if you're using that, you might want to create a new layer, which usually there's like a paper thing right here, new layer. So first, to get rid of like big pictures, you can Control A and backspace in Photoshop or Clip Paint Studio. It doesn't work for Psy though, but you can get rid of all this real quick by clicking this paper with an eraser. Boom, all gone. Alright, so I usually like creating a new file, so we have a new layer. And I have a bunch of brushes and stuff, but you usually get like markers or pens and stuff like that, and pencils. So your setup will look a little different than mine. But I like marker settings, they're going to be different. But for now, I'll just use a regular marker brush. But you can get this to look the same as you want if you look up tutorials on brushes, but this is just to cover basics. Alright, so right now I'm going to sketch something, and I will be right back with you. Okay, so we got our little sketch going on here, and what we're going to do is line art it. Now there's a few handy shortcut keys that really help, and methods. So first up here, your opacity, however you pronounce it, helps you control how see-through your picture will be. So for sketches, this is what I like to do, is to turn it down. See how it gets see-through. That way you won't confuse your sketches and your line art, because if we had this at 100% and then we try doing line art, it can get really confusing. So that's why I like to turn it down. Alright, so some shortcut keys that will help is pushing Control plus and Control minus. These should be by your backspace key. Control plus zooms in equals zoom in, and Control minus equals zooms out. So this equals zooming out. And it helps a lot. It cuts down your time. The faster you learn that and get used to it, the faster it'll help you and help you go around in the canvas. Alright, so spacebar is usually the hand, and you can move your picture around, and that is really handy. Don't ban me. So another thing that helps you while you are drawing is flipping your canvas. Inside, this is it. And if you see right here, it doesn't change the direction of your picture. Your picture will always still look this way. And this will help you with brush strokes if you're having a hard time. Like, say I am having a hard time with these strokes because I'm not used to strokes going this way. I can just flip it and help me with these strokes. Actually, it's the other way around. But of me having a hard time, but you get the point. It'll help. It's better to go the strokes that you're easier with, the way your hand moves. So I have my shortcut is set to H to horizontal, for equals horizontal. That way I can just flip it back and forth. It is up to you what you would like to make your shortcut key. Okay, I had to double check, but yes, this is how you will change your shortcut keys. So keyboard shortcut keys, and then you choose the letter, and then you choose what you would like it to be. I like to have it flip horizontally, and there we go. And now we can flip it horizontally. So we have Control plus, Control minus, flip horizontally. Now if you're really having a hard time with certain angles and flipping it isn't helping, sometimes you can rotate it. I don't know much for it in the later Photoshops, but in Paint Studio you can rotate it. Click Paint Studio, but they have a bar. I don't have a shortcut. But for Psi, you push Alt and space, and you can rotate it. That's pretty handy if you don't have one of those tablets like the Intuos Pros that can rotate things. I personally don't use them. Use the rotate ring. Uh, it it gets a little out of my control, but this I feel control for. Okay, and then you can push tab to get rid of the sides. This works in Clip Paint Studio as well. Photoshop, I don't remember. I haven't used Photoshop in that way in a long time. But it really helps because you get more space. And one more thing that will help with your line art is minimizing and going to Window and New, and you get another window. You can also do this in Photoshop and Clip Paint Studio as well. That way, because once you get so close, you kind of lose details. And it doesn't end up looking right when you zoom back out. But at least you have a little window to help see if you're still on track. And it helps immensely. It really does. I think that's the basics about lining. So I am going to line this real quick and then we'll get in a little bit to coloring. So be right back. I also forgot to mention that if you make a mistake and you want to get rid of it, you push Ctrl Z. In Photoshop, if you want to keep going back, you push Ctrl Shift Z to get rid of it. Otherwise, if you keep pushing Ctrl Z, it'll just come back. If you want to bring back the last stroke that you did in Psy and maybe Clip Studio Paint, you push Ctrl Y and it'll bring it back. So Ctrl Z to get rid of it, Ctrl Y to bring it back. This doesn't work in Photoshop. Photoshop, you just push Ctrl Z and it'll bring it back. If you want to get rid of it completely and go back a few steps, in Photoshop you push Ctrl Shift Z. For long lines like these, if you feel like you're gonna have a hard time, like it's gonna come out shaky, what you can do is go to Stabilizer and pick any of these numbers, and it'll help you create more stable lines. You can find this in Clip Studio Paint too. I am not sure if Photoshop has it. I don't think so. But there are, I think, widgets they're called, that you can get that helps you stabilize your lines and help them not to be shaky. A lot of artists like to use this, and it's very helpful, especially if you don't have a steady hand. Okay, that should be it for lining Vegeta. Let's take this off. Yeah, looking good. So now we have our line art, and there's a couple ways we can start the coloring process. Some people like to, and this hides layers. When you poke the eyeball, if you poke the eyeball, it's gonna close its eye. So that's how you get rid of hiding the other layer if you don't want to see the sketch anymore. Some people like to get the colors and just start painting behind. And for time's sake, that's not a really good idea, but I really suggest it for people still getting used to their tablets. If you're still new to your tablet and everything, I suggest using it as a mouse and just painting in stuff so you kind of just get familiar with how everything looks with your painting. And you just get used to all the pen pressures and stuff and how it'll look. But what I usually like to do is at least make a mask first. And I'm not talking about this mask layer. However, I don't know how to really use it correctly in this program, but you can use it in the other programs. But that's not what we're going to talk about, since I don't really understand it inside. So what I like to do is, on my line art, I'm going to make a copy of it in case I don't want to mess things up. That's what I usually like to do. So I do that with Control A, Control C for copy, Control V for paste. In Photoshop, you can push Control J and it'll just make a duplicate of your layer. So what I'm going to do is add to this line art, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to put a little thing here. Now it's important to make sure your holes are closed, because what we're going to do is we're going to select around him. So you push the one here, and I set my short key for W for wand, because that shortcut key is used in Photoshop and my work uses Photoshop, and that helps. Alright, so then we select around. In other programs, you might want to make sure all your lines are closed. Control D for deselect. But make sure your lines are closed, otherwise you're going to have a really frustrating bad time. So, select around, and then you push, in the other programs you push Control I or Control Shift I, it's one of those, but I believe it's Control I, and it'll select invert. But I don't have that short key set yet, but we're going to select here, invert selection. After you invert it in the other programs, you would usually go to selection and either shrink in Clip Studio Paint or contract on Photoshop, and you would contract it by 2 pixels. That way it goes inside your black lines, or your line art, and you won't have anything peeking out. But since we don't have that inside, we don't really have that option. But I am going to get rid of some parts that stick out. There's, select. There's usually a select erase, but what I'm going to use is the lasso, and I'm going to push Alt while in the lasso, because then it'll get rid of. If you want to add, like say if I got rid of a little too much, you push Shift and lasso it back in. So Alt while you're in lasso takes away, Shift adds to your selection. This looks alright, especially for just a small tutorial. So now we have a selection. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to put it under the line art. You can also start labeling these. I usually just don't. But line art, and this is the new layer. And you go to your bucket, and I have the shortcut key for as G for the bucket. You pick a color and you fill it. Now what I also like to do, as in the background, I like to make it a gray so it's easier on my eyes. But now we have a mask, or a base. You could call it base, a mask. I just like calling it a mask. And there's a few ways you can have this. You can either have it like this, or you can create a folder, click this, and then use the mask. That way, so like, if I have a color, whoops, it's gonna go outside. But if I click the out selection and the mask, all that color stays in there. And that's what we want. But you don't have to do the group folder. What you could do, it goes outside, wait, new layer. Don't want to color on that. New layer above your mask, and it goes outside. But if we go to clipping group, it stays in. And you can also do this in Photoshop and Clip Paint Studio. Clip Paint Studio has a different symbol. It doesn't have a clipping group option, just a different symbol, and you can do the same. And in Photoshop, you can just push Alt and between, and it'll have like this arrow thing. And you click it, and it'll do the clipping for you. So now that we have this all set up, we can start coloring him. And I like to do a bunch of solid colors. Now, if you're really good at your line arts, what you could do is go into the line art and get your wand and just select, and you can just fill it. A lot, but my line arts aren't usually that crisp, so I don't usually do that option. And with the skin, like he has skin, so with the skin I like to go a little over, because skin goes underneath your clothes and it's under your hair, so it's okay to have it under. I usually layer them by what comes in order of what you put on. So next would be his shirt. Clip group. And if you want to use the wand, you can use the wand. G to fill it. Make sure you don't do that on your line art. Call this skin shirt. And it's cool to have this mask too. That way nothing in your painting will be see-through. Like if you miss little dots and stuff like that, it'll be alright. It won't be see-through because you have a base there already. And that's why it's good to, especially with the skin, to overcolor a bit. That way you don't have anything see-through. And new, and we're gonna get his hair. The wand. G, because I have my shortcut for the bucket to be G. Make sure I'm on the new layer. Control D for deselect. Control plus. I notice I missed a thing here. His hair won't stay like this color forever. These are just to get the colors down. Fill in those spots. You can also have his eyes on a different layer. I kind of don't worry about that stuff yet, because the eyes, for me, they're pretty simple. They're pretty fast. Okay. Let me save this real quick. Control S for save. Vegeta tutorial. Save. Alright. So now that you have the colors, you can adjust them. Pretty easy. If you don't like this color, you can either lock it by pushing preserve opacity in Psi, or not Psi, but in Clip Paint Studio, there might be one, a lock shape. And in Photoshop, I think it's a square shape. I don't remember, but there is a way to lock that way. You also don't go past. Example, say because this is above the skin layer, it can go over it. And if you want to add shadows and stuff, it goes over. But if we don't do that, if we push preserve opacity or the lock, it doesn't do that. It just stays whatever's colored. But for now, I'm going to change the darkness of it. So I push Control U, and this should also be the same in Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop. And you can change it all different colors, whatever you have on that layer. And you can change the brightness. And I'm going to actually make this a little darker. And I'm going to do the same for his shirt. And his skin. That's not his skin. This is his skin. Alright. So now, I'm going to preserve all of these. I do it as a safety measure. And we're going to choose a soft brush. You should have one called an airbrush. Now, you'll have options. I like using, I'm going to put down base shades. So I like having it really soft, and the density is how see-through it'll be. So it's like opacity, but just how see-through it'll be. Min size is the pointy part. Like if I have it all the way to 0, it'll be pointy the lighter I push. If I have it at 100, it'll be fat. So I'm going to select his skin color. Actually, make that darker. Select his skin color, and I'm going to bring it here more into the saturation. Bring this up a bit. None of this has to be permanent. Like, the more you get used to nothing's permanent, the easier it'll be, because it's all an experiment. And I'm going to imagine the light coming up here. So I'm going to just do this lightly. Then I'm going to get another color and do that on top. Then I'm going to grab these colors and grab my marker. You can mess with your marker options and stuff. But like I said, I'm not going to cover that in this. But you can look up markers, different types of markers and everything on other sites or tutorials. This is just to cover the basics. And what I said in my other tutorials before is to always compliment your art, make it feel good. So, Vegeta, you look absolutely wonderful today. I love what you did with your face. See, now your art feels real good. It is happy. And when your artwork feels happy, you could feel happy. Be nice to your artwork, even though it can be a jerk sometimes. So I'm going to color them real quick, and I am going to get right back to you. And all of this is going to be really challenging and hard to get used to, but you just need to keep at it. You're going to feel discouraged a lot. A lot. But you just have to keep going. And if something doesn't come out perfect, just at least finish it. You can always remake it later. Because in the end, nothing is permanent. You have the final say, but it's at least good to get your artwork done. Don't be like me and have a bunch of unfinished artwork that the world won't see. Because some people say they're going to get back to it. Like sometimes I do get back to old artwork, but by then my style and my taste in whatever it is has changed, that I'm not going to be able to work on it. And I'd be like, oh, I like this idea, but it's been so long, I don't want to work on it anymore. And that happens sometimes. And it's sad, because we just need to finish artwork. I see more of lovely arts. Can also push X if you want to save the colors. In the squares, X is to switch back and forth. See? Just need to do his eyes real quick. This is why also, because I want to make it more gray, but if I go and make it more gray, because I did it on the same layer as the skin, I have to repaint just over it. That's why you can usually do it on a new layer with the eyes. I just don't, because it's easier to, or it's pretty simple to fix it. It's not a big deal. If you want to, you could also just like wand it if you have closed spaces and change it that way. As long as you're on the right freaking layer. You're gonna be on the wrong layer a lot. Also, it's good to have your second window up to also to see how you're doing. So your skin looks a little muddy, like it looks a little gray. Personally, I'm not a fan of those, and I want to bring more life. I'm going to make this what I usually like to do to try and unify or add some kind of life into the hair, or you know, anything on his face. I like to go into overlay. Overlay is really powerful though, so be careful, because you can oversaturate things and over brighten, and it'll take more away from your picture rather than give it the life. I like to go by the less is more rule, and it'll help. So we don't want to mix exactly everything, because some colors I might use differently on the skin than the hair. So I don't want this color I picked to go into the skin, but it goes all together. What we do is we push Control and click the thumbnail for the hair, and now it'll just pick the whatever's there. If the ants annoy you, push Control H and it'll hide it, but it'll still keep your selection. So H for hide. Control H for hide. And then we can also adjust it since it's on its own layer. Now we can either keep these we can also do another layer selection on this layer, the overlay layer, or we can create a new layer. I'm just going to use the same layer though. So now it's time for the blue one. So we click the thumbnail and we pick a color. This will require some experimenting. You don't have to use the same colors as me. And then now if we try to do it to the skin, you see how because we have the skin over, if we try to do the overlay, it'll go onto the other stuff. So how do we prevent that? What we do is we push control, and pushing control in the thumbnail makes the selection. If you push minus and click the thumbnail, it takes away instead. So what you do, control, click thumbnail, it makes a selection. Push control minus and click the thumbnail of the hair and the shirt, it will take away from those and it won't go on them. So now you just have your layer onto the skin layer, and that's how you can avoid it. When I found that out, I was like, yes, that helps a lot. I like that. I will keep that in my data banks that I usually forget. So be careful when using overlay though. It can be addicting, and you can really more damage a piece than bring to it if you use it a little too much, in my opinion. That's just my opinion though. Some people can make it work. Like anything you do, anything an artist does, they can make it work. Just for me, it does not work for me. So I don't try to abuse that power a lot. But other people can make it work. It's not impossible. But if you are just learning from me or using my tips, that is just my tips for the way I color, if that makes any sense. In the end, color in the way you want. I mean, you're the one making it, not me. Alright, so what I also like to do is color the line art. What you could do is straight on color the line art by using the preserve opacity that we've been doing, that we learned. I usually pick the darkest color on it and I make it just a little darker. And then you start coloring. I like doing this because black, for my style, it's too bold. I like coloring the lines. So you can either do that, or you can create a new one, clip the group, and if you go over, you can just erase it and it won't get rid of your line art. You can also have it locked, but I just like doing this just in case. So I am going to color all this line art. I like just coloring it all one color and then just filling in the rest. So I filled in all with the bucket tool, and now I'm just going to go in and just color. And we also missed a few spots. It's okay. Go to unlock. And we go to the mask because that is going out. So we go to the mask, we erase it. See? And I think that is the basics of Photoshop. So I hope this tutorial helped. If you have any more questions, please leave some comments or ask me on my Tumblr, pyramidheaddesby.tumblr.com. And I will see you next time.